Back to Vicki for another audience question. Vicki.
Thanks, Rory. I'm here with Jeremy Mercer, who has a question.
Hi. Nashville's traffic problem has been a hot topic in this year's mayoral race, and there have been a lot of promises made as to how that can best be solved. Given that a lot of people complain about areas on or around interstates, which are roadways governed by both the state and federal government, I wonder, realistically, what are some specific actions you could take as mayor to improve our traffic in Nashville?
Megan?
In order to improve traffic in Nashville, there's a multifaceted approach to this. There's just not one silver bullet. And I see this in short, medium, and long term. And the short term is to get our transit right in Nashville. I mean, recently we've just launched looking at how the buses work best. And the conversations that we're hearing back are more frequency and more routes and more access ride. And when I hear the frequency and the route conversation, you know, what sticks with me the most is when people say, I can get to my first job, I can't get to my second job. So we have to get that right in Nashville. But then we have to get people in and out. You mentioned the interstate. That's a complicated question, because what we have the power to do is to bring people in and out from the region, and that can look like light rail. Somebody said the other day, what about monorail? Have you talked to Disney? They know how to get people in and out all the time. So maybe the conversation is with Disney. But for me, it's about that short, medium, and long-term fixes. We also have to be much, much more aggressive about going after federal dollars to make sure that we can bring them back here. Right now, we have the opportunity to use those federal dollars in creating infrastructure in Nashville. The challenge is that we need to make sure that that infrastructure goes where we need it to go.
David.
Well, sure. The first thing we can do is there is some low-hanging fruit that Linda Rubbervic used to talk about, which is the idea of we haven't changed our traffic signaling program here for 17 years. And not only has volume of traffic changed and the flow of traffic changed, the quality of the technology is so much better where it can detect in real time the flow of traffic and dynamically change it. That traffic engineers I've talked to, probably 6 or 8 people, have said if we'll just do that on 30 or 40 intersections, we'll see an immediate improvement in traffic flow, and that'll buy us a little time. And what that buys us time to do is we take advantage of Governor Haslam's new focus on transit and infrastructure. This is going to be the state's focus for the next 12 to 18 months. Well, let's begin and start a process where we pull together all the leaders, the governor, Commissioner of Transportation Schroer, the Congressman Blackburn and Cooper, elected officials, and make sure we all understand this is one of our most urgent needs, because we have a lot of competing plans right here, and what we need is some leadership and pull together as one. So let's start with that. And then secondly, let's engage the public in a very robust conversation. I'm not coming here to say this is my 30-page plan on how we're going to fix transit. That's sort of the opposite of my approach. You know, this is taxpayer money. This is everyone's money. Everybody ought to have a say in what we wind up with. So let's create a very public process, like I mentioned earlier, the challenges with the current administration. Let's make sure we're very engaging, very inclusive, very transparent, and let's find out what this community wants to do. My guess it'll be various modes of transit. Some it might be private sector. You know, to the extent that we can involve the private sector and have them shoulder some of the development costs, that'll be great, because we've added a lot of debt to our books in recent years, about $1 billion of debt in the last 6 or 7 years. And so as somebody who's concerned about that and doesn't want us to get in financial jeopardy, I would encourage us to consider that and invite in the Ubers and megabuses and Lyfts of the world to help us on this conversation.
Megan, your rebuttal.
The good news is that we've actually already aggressively gone after some federal dollars that are doing traffic signal synchronization. So we are actually already working on that. But there's always more to do. And when we talk about the overall state process and perspective on investment, when I sat at the Governor Haslam roundtable a couple of weeks ago and listened to the appetite for taking the investment potential and investing in roads and bridges, and I can tell you that didn't sound like there was a lot of appetite for putting any dollars into that. So the challenge is going to come down to how do we work with the federal government and how do we work locally to find the funding.
All right, let's move on now. Another question for you. We'll begin with you, David. The iconic AT&T building downtown, it generated $1.7 million in property taxes last year, but as a News Channel 5 investigation revealed, it was built using tax increment financing, And because of that, only $49,000 of that went into the city's general fund, which pays for schools and other critical services. The rest paid for more development downtown. For buildings like the Batman Building, where TIF loans were paid off years ago, should that property tax money pay for city services? And would you change the way Nashville uses TIF?
Yes, and that was an awesome investigative work that you guys did, because you're right, I think there's a role for TIF. I think it was Mayor Bredesen, if I'm not mistaken, who got that project going. And in part, the focus of TIF, tax increment financing, is to help revitalize areas that need a boost, maybe to accelerate what the private market will do on its own. And so providing TIF financing there was a great idea, but years ago that loan was repaid. And so the incremental tax revenue, in my view, should go back into the general fund. I'm not against TIF, but let's use TIF in areas that really need it. I think most people, when we look at downtown, we don't see a very blighted area. I mean, it is about as developed as a place can get in Davidson County. But we do have other areas that really need some help. Areas in North Nashville along Jefferson Street, there are two zones there, 2 areas that are available for TIF financing. Areas in Madison could use that sort of attention as well. Some areas in Antioch, which is actually getting it now. So I think TIF has a time and place. I think its time downtown has largely expired, and when we strike new deals, let's see if we can make sure that once these loans are paid back, the incremental increase in tax revenue goes back to taxpayers so we can fund schools and other basic services of our government.
Megan.
I think the one benefit that we get when we look back is to learn from what others have done. And when we look at how other TIF deals have been done, fast forward to today, we've been able to say we need to do these differently. We need to have clawbacks. We need to be much more deliberate in putting those dollars back in as fast as we can, and we've done that. And TIF is a tool for redevelopment, and clearly it has worked in the Gulch, it's worked downtown, and now we need to expand it. We recently looked at Antioch. We're bringing 2,000 jobs to Antioch because we have been able to use that tool. I was at the Bellevue Mall on Saturday, and we had a big Bellevue Mall party where everybody was there because Bellevue Mall is coming down. That wouldn't be possible unless we had the tool to use to make that investment happen. Now, I will tell you, everybody brought their chairs, and I think they thought the thing was going to blow up. It didn't. There was just a little hammer thing. But in the next 6 to 8 months, it's going to look so much different. That's the opportunity for using that tool. And when used right, it's a great way to keep Nashville moving forward.
David, 30 seconds, if you like.
Well, just as stated before, I'm a TIF fan if used properly. Mm-hmm. I think if we can accelerate development, private development in areas that really need it, like North Nashville and Jefferson Street, really could use some more TLC, more attention. Frankly, beyond that, I think the mayor's office ought to take the lead in recruiting more companies and employers to the North Nashville area. It's an area that's been sort of overlooked in my view. So those are my thoughts on that.